Hour 2 is brought to you by Culligan Water of Regina. Clear water, clear choice. Filter out the bad and taste the good. The CFL Combine's coming to the Queen City March 21st to the 23rd. Jim Barker will be there, and he joins us now. Bo in Saskatoon writes in, he says, "Sweet, I thought I missed the coach. Thought I'd have to rewatch to be able to watch live today. This is awesome." Yeah, you got him live and in color. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing fantastic. Fantastic.
Good to hear. Well, for all of Canada going nuts, well, most of Canada going nuts with the trade deadline, for the football fans, they're here today wanting to talk some ball. And more than anything, I guess, what's keeping you busy? What's got your attention the most right now, football-wise?
Well, I'm getting ready for the draft, which it means getting ready for the combine. So I'll watch film on every player. Now, they're not doing a live stream this year. Usually I get to announce a live stream and can give a little background to the fans on every player that comes up and, you know, what I think their chances of making it. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm going through and evaluating every player because we'll be doing the draft show on April 27th on TSN. And, you know, it's important to have that knowledge. So there's a lot of players. There's 60-some players. And to watch film and write evaluations on every guy so you don't forget, that's kind of where my time is. 11 new players from the combine I was at last week in Waterloo are going to Regina. So, in Regina, there's going to be a lot of fans there. So that's going to make it a lot more fun. And I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a fun week, or 3 days anyway, 4 days.
Yeah, there's no doubt it is a lot of fun to watch live for sure for the fans. Hey, with the NFL draft coming up in late April, the two Canadian names I'm hearing the most are Curtis Rourke, obviously, and Elik Ayamaner out of Stanford, the receiver from Medicine Hat. Where do you realistically think Curtis Rourke goes?
Well, because of the injury, I'm going to say 4th round. Could be 5th round. Without the injury, I think he could have gone as high as the 3rd, and I've mentioned that on the show. He's 6'5". He's won at a high level. Took a team that hadn't won, and they won with him at quarter. Those kind of things are important. So I'm going to say 4th round because of the injury that he's coming off of. And anytime you have somebody coming off of an ACL, it's always dicey, which leads into the whole Sam Darnold thing, with J.J. McCarthy coming off of a major injury. And so I think that will hurt him a little bit. I just watched Elik, the receiver from Stanford, and, he's a really interesting player. He does a lot of things well. He's very smooth, runs well, make the tough catch. I think he could go as early as the 2nd round. I really do. I think he's a quality guy. Yeah.
He's a stud. By the way, I will ask you the viewer questions, then I have a bunch of my own. BW, he is from Edmonton. He's currently trucking through Saskatchewan. He says, Coach Barker, what have you heard about the labor issues in the United Football League? Are they going to strike?
I think it's still up in the air. The quarterbacks basically struck during the quarterback mandatory mini camps they had. They are in camp right now. Interesting story. I mean, I hadn't ever seen this happen, but Toronto signed a player named Ryan Cole from Richmond, an offensive lineman, and he had been with Indianapolis, got hurt, was on injured reserve. Well, they signed him, and then the next day they cut him, which I thought was weird. And then it came out that he got cut by the Colts. So I thought, okay, maybe he was still under contract. They didn't know it or whatever. And so they would sign him right back. But no, they didn't. He ended up going to the UFL and signed with the St. Louis Battlehawks. And so they're in training camp, and the Argos lost a player that they had under contract to the UFL. Now, there'll be some guys like that because this is a youngster. He's a 6'5" tackle, spent 1 year with the Colts. He's that kind of guy is the guy that goes to the UFL. And but their labor strike is real. They have a union. And again, the UFL Yeah, they're owned by Fox, but how much money does Fox want to put into it? They're asking for, obviously more money. That's the crux of it. And quarterbacks were making 50,000, and I think they bumped them a little bit. So I think that's still a big question mark as to whether they'll play. But regardless, I hope they do play because it does give guys an opportunity to play, and coaches don't lose jobs right this time of the year, which is no fun. I've had that happen where you lose your job in May. What do? I mean, when Vince McMahon pulled the plug on us in the XFL, the original XFL, it was in May. And he said, we'll pay you for one more month. Well, it was like we ended up getting a full year because they just didn't understand. I mean, you have coaches who moved across the country and on his word that the thing would be there for 3 years. So it's a tough time. So any UFL coaches that get cut, I feel for those guys because they'll stop the league and stop paying them. And, that's the thing people forget about. I mean, so I hope they work it out for those guys. I would like to see that happen. But the UFL, they're in training camp. They kick off March 25th or 6th, I believe. And that'll be interesting.
The fans have no idea. And with regards to the players are the currency of the leagues. And my point on this is somebody wrote in the other day and said, will the Canadian US dollar affect Americans coming to the CFL? And stick with me, Jim. I've been doing this a long time, and I've been really close with players over the years. We've had a worse weakened dollar than this, and I never heard the players complain about it. I didn't. They just want to play. I don't think it will affect them, but maybe you have a different take on that.
No, I agree with you. When I came in the league, I don't even remember. It was way down. And when you're thinking about, I'm going to play pro football, and the dollar isn't the same, but I'll be able to handle it. And that gives, back in the day, it gave Calgary and Edmonton huge advantage because of the tax differences, and you can actually put more in your jeans and that kind of thing. So, I think it's a problem. The UFL is there. Those guys are going to make 50,000, which is, maybe that's the same thing. Maybe that's the equivalent of whatever the dollar's at now. I know it's down, but it's down as low as it's been in a long time. It's just an interesting question as to, what, how does that affect the Vladdy Guerrero? How does that affect, the difference in dollar? How does that affect it? Because they're collecting revenue in Canadian dollars and trying to convert it at the same rate that the Houston Astros convert it. And I've just always felt like, wow, how can they? That's a losing battle. You would think. Same thing with the Raptors and anybody competing with the American teams.
You know what it is? Tax accountants, and trust me, I know a lot. They're like walking away from pro athletes. They're like, I don't want to do your taxes. This is crazy. It's insane. So, there's a lot of parallels between the CFL and NFL, as you know, and I see the Cowboys redoing deals with Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. It reminded me of the BC Lions restructuring their deal with Nathan Rourke and all the variety of them. And to me, I'm a Cowboys fan and a long-suffering Cowboys fan. I say Jerry hasn't figured out yet how to do this. Do you know what I mean? When a team restructures a deal, can you take us behind that and what goes into that?
Well, basically what you have to do is you have to say two things. One is, do they need help now? Like, they may have needed help last year with their cap, so they do Dak Prescott, redo him, give him less, and then give him more. We'll use a CFL example of Flo Arimolade. Okay, he went into last year with the Argos, and the Argos were pushing the cap number. So they got him to renegotiate his deal and then made it up in a February or January 15th or February 1st bonus. Now, that's common. That gets them under the cap, and it allows the player to still get his money. Well, what ended up happening was he played the year for the less money. Then the Argos traded him, prior to that coming due, which then it fell on Calgary to make that difference up. The player still ended up getting what he was what was in his original contract. So it depends on why you're renegotiating, or if you're just trying to extend. If you're trying to extend, again, there's a price every year you get on a player. There's a price for that. The CFL is a little different. There's nothing guaranteed in the CFL. Although now you can guarantee a half of their last year. And that's coming up with a couple of contracts. I think Zach Caleros, he's got half of his contract guaranteed. So if he was to decide to retire, okay, he's still going to get that. And so that's kind of one of the differences in the CFL now than when I was in it, is they do have that guarantee in it. So like with Jerry Jones, what he's trying to do is give his organization and the players in the locker room the feeling of, we're going to take care of our players. It's what the Bengals, they're going to do with Jamar Chase. I mean, I know Joe Burrow was complaining. He said, we don't do what other teams do, which is set us up for the future. Our players come in and just want to be paid the going rate, and they're not getting that. So they're leaving and going elsewhere. The Bengals were rated last amongst all the teams in terms of travel and some of the they do the thing of where they grade facilities and training room and all those things. Well, the Bengals graded really, really low, and then so why would a player stay there if all the extra things are low and they're not going to give me what I can get if I go down the street? Then why wouldn't I go down the street? So when you're negotiating those kind of deals, you have to say, what is this player value to us? And for example, Jamar Chase is huge for the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay, he may not be near as important to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay, because of the style they do, because of Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have a relationship that it's important to Joe Burrow that Jamar Chase is there. That adds value to him. So where they might offer him $25 million with the Joe Burrow thing, maybe they go to $30 million. So there's little factors like that. That to me that's what a GM's job is. What is a player's value to your organization? And when I see like in the CFL where they pay a guy, they paid Robbie Smith $260,000 to go to Edmonton. Okay, now it's easy for me to say, wow, I think that's exorbitant for a guy who I think he's at his best when he's a special teams player and can play 15 snaps. You're getting a quality best in the league, but when he's a starter, he's not going to be in that category. That's just his strength is the fact he can do both. So is that worth that much money? Well, to the Edmonton Elks, it was very much worth that money. To 8 other teams, it may not be. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. And that's the thing that I think people have to understand. When they go out and sign a player, okay, Flo Arimolade, shoot him. When he got 230 or 40, and I mean, he's undersized. He's 5'11", defensive end. And I didn't see it until I was with him. And that year I was with him and I saw what he brings to the locker room, what he brings to the players around him was worth every penny of that. And that's the thing that's why if you haven't coached a player, if you haven't had him in your locker room, you don't know his value. Jake Ceresna made a lot of money this year. Those guys know him. They had, Ed had him in Edmonton originally, and they felt like it was worth the amount of money they paid him. So every player's value is going to vary on the team, and every team has to establish the value on the players. That's the great thing about being a GM, is that's what your job is. What is his value to what we're trying to do based on the coaching staff? And that's where there's a lot of problems too, is a lot of times to the front office, this is what his value is. To the coaching staff, his value maybe isn't quite as much, and they have to get that on the same page. I think you look at the Raiders, I think they've had that issue. Now, they just gave Max Crosby, made him the highest paid non-quarterback in football. Now, there'll be people in the league who say, wow, Max Crosby, I don't know if he's the guy that I would do that with. But to the Raiders, and they've had him and they understand his importance, it is that. So again, I think it's one of those things that every team is different. The Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones, who knows what they feel is important in signing players. They felt CeeDee Lamb was important, that they should tell their players, we're going to take care of you.
Yeah. Why? That's why I still stick with that. They don't know what they're doing, and history would show that they don't. But in Sask, Brendan Tam, this is the relationship we had. I don't know if you ever worked with Brendan Tam anywhere in your travels, but for the 2013 season when we were hosting the Grey Cup, he showed me the deals that we're doing. And he was like, Chris Getzlaff, John Chick, Weston Dressler, all you guys, I'm going to pay you this low amount this year. But on paper here, we're going to, this big balloon amount. He wrote it down for me. This big balloon amount next year just to get you all under the cap. And that's how we had that all-star team. Trouble was, next year or the year after, he gets fired. You want to know why they all hate Chris Jones in Saskatchewan? Jones comes in and cuts them all.
Exactly.
And the guys,
that's right.
Jones was, they were like, you owe it. We have a contract. Jones was like, I didn't sign it. Oh, boy. Why did I open that can of worms?
That's the CFL. And that's football. I mean, that's it's like Sam Darnold. What is Sam Darnold's value to the Minnesota Vikings? Okay, if I'm the Minnesota Vikings, his value is going to be whatever I have to pay him to make sure he comes back to us. I think he would lean to coming back because of knowing the coach and things like that. But to the Viking organization, to go into it, to be where you were a game away from going to the Super Bowl, and then to go back and have a rookie quarterback and a guy that, has basically coming off an injury and say, this is your team. I think that's it just doesn't make sense. And I don't think it's fair to the fans and that type of thing. So I think that's why the Sam Darnold thing will be interesting, because I do believe if I'm in the Vikings organization, I'm going to give him what he needs so that we can come out next year and our fans believe we're a game away.
Oh, my God, Jim, we could go on forever. Then why didn't they franchise tag him if he was worth that much? The figure I heard, if they had, would have been 35 to 40 million. That's a lot, though.
That is a lot.
Sam Darnold.
That is a lot. And they probably felt like we can probably get him for around maybe 28, 25 mil. We can get him for less. He's going to come here for less because he knows the situation, that his relationship with the other players, with the coaches is great, and blah. So there's value in that from the players' side. So they probably felt like we don't have to pay him that in order to get him to re-sign. So again, those are the things. I don't even know who they franchise, but they can only franchise one guy. And obviously they felt like somebody else was there that they needed to do that with. And again,
for sure.
I would say if I was them, I would say we can get him for less than $35 million.
Jim, wonderful chat. Great chat. Have a great week, and we'll chat with you next week.
All right. I hope you're in a better mood next week. You were sour at the beginning today.
I'm ready for the weekend.
Like you.
I'm ready for the weekend.
How about that?
All right.
Thanks, Jim. You put a smile on my face. He's turned my frown upside down. We'll be back in a moment with a sports update and viewer takeover. We're live on Game Plus Television, streaming live and podcasting wherever the best podcasts are found.